My student ID is 22032796. Bad character evidence refers to evidence of a person previous misconduct, which is typically inadmissible unless it meets specific legal criteria. The prosecution in R versus Minister seeks to introduce bad character evidence against the defense witness Mrs. Denver Snow. The defense argues that this evidence is unfairly prejudicial and irrelevant. This presentation will outline the legal standards, court rulings and arguments against its admissibility under the Criminal Justice Act 2003, CGA 2003, Section 100. Before we delve into cases, let's first understand the legal standards governing bad character evidence. Under Section 100, subsection 1 of the Criminal Justice Act 2003, bad character evidence of a non-defendant is only admissible if it is important explanatory evidence, has substantial probative value, or it is in the interest of justice. Judges must carefully balance probative value against the unfair prejudice. In R versus Henson 2005, the court emphasized that a witness' past misconduct must directly impact their credibility in a present case. If the evidence does not meet these criteria, it must be excluded to ensure fairness. Now let's look at the prosecution. Prosecution wants to introduce the evidence. The prosecution argues that Mrs. Snow's 2017 theft conviction undermines her credibility as John Lannister's alibi witness. They claim that her previous conviction for dishonesty shows a pattern of behavior making her testimony unreliable. The Criminal Justice Act 2003, Section 100 of 1 paragraph P allows evidence if it is substantially relevant to an important matter in dispute. However, simply having a past conviction of dishonesty does not automatically make someone an unreliable witness. The defense challenges this claim, citing that this conviction is too remote to be relevant of the present case. Now let's discuss why defense is objecting to this evidence. Mrs. Snow's 2017 theft conviction was not for personal gain, but stemmed for an ethical dilemma as a doctor. She altered patient records to help someone in need. Courts have ruled in R versus Wade 2001 that the relevance of past conviction has decreased over time. Since Mrs. Snow's case is 7 years old and unrelated to perjury or lying in court, it does not logically impact her credibility in R versus Lannister. The defense argues that allowing this evidence would unfairly bias the jury against her. The key concern is the case is whether the jury will be influenced by prejudice rather than facts. The European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, Article 6 ensures a fair trial for both defendants, witnesses. If Mrs. Snow's conviction is introduced, the jury may unfairly assume that that she is dishonest in all aspects of life, which is not necessarily true. Courts have warned in R versus Brewster 2010 that bad character evidence must not be used just to discredit a witness. The defense contends that prejudicial effect of any probative value making the evidence inadmissible. For bad character evidence to be allowed, it must be highly relevant to the case. Let's analyze whether it applies over here. R versus Stephenson 2006, the court ruled that a past conviction must have direct relevance to the credibility of the witness in the current trial. Mrs. Snow's prior conviction does not relate to her truthfulness in court. The prosecution has not proven that her previous action means she is incapable of telling the truth in R versus Lannister. The defense argues that her past ethical mistake does not suggest a general tendency to lie and therefore lacks substantial probative value. Even if evidence meets criteria, the court must decide whether admitting it serves justice. Criminal Justice Act 2003, Section 100 of 1 paragraph B states that bad character evidence should only be admitted when it serves the interest of justice. Factors considered include nature and seriousness of previous misconduct, time elapsed since the offence, relevance of the case in hand. Since Snow's conviction is unrelated to theft burglary, making it irrelevant to the trial of John Lannister, the defence submits that allowing this evidence does not serve justice but rather distracts from the core of issues of the trial. Legal precedent of the supports excluding the evidence. Let's look at some key cases. R versus Henson 2005, bad character must demonstrate a pattern relevant to the current case. R versus Beard 2001, older conviction hold less probative value. R versus V 1993, evidence must directly relate to credibility in this trial. R versus Brewster 2010, courts must ensure bad character evidence does not lead to unfair bias. R versus Hinkton 2005, bad character should only be introduced if it is highly relevant and outweighs any prejudice. The defense relies on the cases to argue that Mrs. Snow's conviction should not be admitted. Based on everything we have discussed, let's summarize why the prosecution's application should be denied. Mrs. Snow's conviction fails to meet the Criminal Justice Act 2003 Section 100 criteria. The conviction is too old to have any real probative value. Admitting the evidence would create unfair prejudice against Mrs. Snow's and mislead the jury. Legal precedents such as R versus Henson and R versus Ware support the exclusion of the evidence. The defense must ask the court to reject the prosecution application and to adduce bad character evidence. Sir, do you have any questions?
What is bad character evidence and when is it generally admissible?
Bad character evidence refers to information about previous misconduct not directly related to the current changes. Under the Criminal Justice Act 2003, it is only admissible if it meets specific legal criteria, if it just have significant relevance and not cause any unfair prejudice.
Why did the defense object to the admission of Mrs. Snow's prior conviction?
Sir, the defense argued the conviction was irrelevant to the current charges in R versus Lannister. They claimed it had no probative value in determining guilt or innocence. Introducing it could unfairly bias the jury against the defendant.
What legal test is applied under Section 100 subsection 1 subsection B of the CGA 2003?
The court must assess the evidence has substantial probative value for the matter in issue. It considers factors like nature of misconduct and its relevance to the current case. Justice requires excluding evidence that is more prejudicial than probative.
What are the potential risks of admitting irrelevant bad character evidence?
Irrelevant bad character evidence can distract from the main issues of the trial. It may unfairly influence the jury by painting the defendant in the negative light. This undermines the principles of a fair and impartial hearing.
How did the defense support its objection using legal precedent?
Sir, the defense referred previous cases where court excluded their similar prejudicial evidence. These precedents emphasize the need for relevance and fairness in the criminal trials. They support the argument in Mrs. Snow's conviction should not be admitted.
What was the defense's final submission to the court?
The defense concluded that admitting the evidence would compromise justice. They urged the court to reject it due to its irrelevance and prejudicial effect. A fair trial requires focusing solely on the facts of present case. Thank you, sir.